And we are getting ready to go live. We are live on the coalition's webpage.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 General Election Forum, co-sponsored tonight by the Hamilton County, the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, as well as the National Council of Negro Women. I happen to be a member of both. We have a good forum tonight, basically dealing with the issues. We do forums, as you know, at least the coalition knows, we've done forums every year for many years during all of the political elections. We didn't do the city council race this year simply because there's only 9 slots available and 10 people running. And so we didn't really want to waste that additional time where we could be focusing on some very critical issues in our community. This is a nonpartisan forum. And everyone has the opportunity to participate, at least by chat. I will be your host or your co-host this evening. I am Tracy Hunter. I will be joined by Carol Johnson, as well as Minister Kathy Tyler. They will be the co-host or co-moderators of tonight's panel. We have several issues that we will be bringing to you tonight. Starting with issue 22, which is the sale of the Cincinnati Public Railroad, followed by issue 1 that has to do with women's reproductive rights, followed by issue 24 that deals with affordable housing, the amendment to the Cincinnati Charter, and finally we will end with one of the 3 Cincinnati school board members that are running for office. Tonight's individuals or panelists will be speaking pro I believe their issues, they will all be on the same side, so tonight is not a political debate. However, this will be one of 2 forums that we will bring you. We will bring the opposing side, I believe next Monday, the same time, same place, by Zoom. We do encourage everyone that is joining us now, whether you are members with the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, the National Council of Negro Women, or you are guests, to please share the live stream. We are live currently on Facebook. You can go to a Coalition for Just Hamilton County Facebook page. Please share there, share on your page, if you will, so that we can make sure that we disseminate the information regarding these extremely important issues as widely and as broadly as we possibly can. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we will do our best to make sure that we present every question that is presented to one of our panelists this evening that will join us. On the first issue tonight, we have, again, issue 22 that has to do with the sale of the railroad, a railroad that has been in the possession of the city of Cincinnati for many, many, many years. And there's an initiative to sell that railroad. And currently, I believe that almost every city council person, including the mayor, are for the sale of the railroad, with the exception of Councilman Scotty Johnson. He is supposed to be on this evening. He has not yet joined us. I am told he is running late, but we do have a very strong proponent against the sale of the railroad in the form of Reverend Damon Lynch III. And so we are going to invite Reverend Lynch. We're going to ask him to, and I'm not sure, Dr. Enoch, why you're is it just my screen, or for whatever reason you're in the middle of the screen? And so at this point, I would like to introduce to you Reverend Damon Lynch, and I would ask him to first just introduce himself, as well as the position he has taken on the railroad.
Thank you, Judge, and to the Coalition. Thank everyone for allowing me to speak tonight. So my name is Damon Lynch III. I'm the proud pastor of the New Prospect Baptist Church here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I am asking the voters to vote no on issue 22. As you said, issue 22 is the sale of the railroad that the city has owned for over 100 years. And I'm part of a coalition of people who are saying no. The NAACP has voted to vote no on the sale of the railroad. The Amos Group has voted to vote no on the sale of the railroad. There are numerous pastors and other leaders, predominantly in the African American community, who have said to vote no. And there's a large group of whites from different political perspectives who have also said to vote no on the sale of the railroad. What I want to do tonight is just give you the reasons why the groups that I'm a part of, that we say vote no. Whenever I think of railroads, my immediate thought goes to the word reparations. Railroads, race, and reparations. And so one of the things that I will share with you is that it's right here. In July of this year, we wrote an op-ed piece in the Inquirer entitled "Railroad Funds Should Repair Harms from Racist Policies." And we delineate, as the city does, all of the racial disparities that exist in the city of Cincinnati. And so when we wrote this in July of this year, at that time we were saying, if the railroad is to be sold, there has to be money that goes towards repairing the damage that's been done to the African American community. We first talked about what happened to Kenyon Bar, the Kenyon Bar neighborhood, where over 10,000, in the 1950s, 10,000 Black families were displaced. Their businesses, their homes, down in what's now called the Queensgate area. We talked about the fact that railroads and reparations have been given around the world. So we were on this idea, we were on this subject as late as and as early as July of this year. And so again, I tied railroads to reparations. Here's an article dated February the 3rd, 2011. February the 3rd, 2011. It says, French railroads, the Holocaust, and American slave reparations. So I want everybody to follow this for a moment. So in 2010, this French state-run railroad was bidding to build a $2.6 billion high-speed rail project in Florida. So there's a French state-run railroad who was bidding to build the $2.6 billion high-speed rail project in Florida. It says Jewish citizens in Florida said, we can't let that happen. And the reason Jewish citizens in Florida said that is because this French-run railroad was complicit in transporting Jews to the concentration camps. So this article is in 2011. So it talks about that. And then later in this same article, it says the question that the French and SNCF, which is the railroad company, says the question they are wrestling with is now focused, at least in part, on whether reparations should be paid to the survivors. And this is one that American historians of slavery should pay attention to. Ironically, Florida railroads were nearly all initially constructed with slave labor before 1865, when the Civil War ended slavery. Next sentence. Indeed, the major railroad companies in the U.S. today, including CSX, Norfolk Southern, and BNSF, among others, are successors to the slave-built railroads of the Old South. Over 10,000 miles of Southern Railroad track was built with slave labor. So what this article is challenging us, and it speaks to us, and my challenge to us, is that the Jewish community understood. There's no way we're letting you come in here and build a $2.6 billion high-speed rail project and not be held accountable for your complicity and your actions during the Holocaust. The writer of this article speaks to us as African Americans here living in Cincinnati. Southern Railroad, which was the railroad that Norfolk Southern purchased. It's called Norfolk Southern because Norfolk purchased Southern Railroad. Southern Railroad purchased slaves, our ancestors, to build their railroad, to build their wealth. Norfolk purchased Southern. So Norfolk, when they purchased Southern Railroad, They not only purchased the asset, you purchased the debt. The city of Cincinnati has benefited for over hundreds of years from the railroads that our ancestors built. My contention is this, and I got like 4 other reasons why that's a no on this thing, but this is my main and firm reason. My contention is this: we as African Americans living here in 2023 would be remiss if we didn't do as other communities do and fight for the reparations that we are due. It would be an affront to our ancestors who built this railroad, who built this wealth for others. And now Norfolk Southern has benefited, the city of Cincinnati has benefited. At the same time, if you ever, anybody go look at the blueprint that the city has put out, it's called a blueprint. The median net worth of whites in the city of Cincinnati, the median, this is like on page 2 of this document that the city put out, the median net worth of whites in the city of Cincinnati is $77,000. The median net wealth of blacks in Cincinnati is $1,500. $77,000. This is just Cincinnati. This is Cincinnati's document, not anything we came up with. They have been building wealth for years, for centuries. So again, this was an article in 2011. This is an article in 2014. This is from the BBC. France agrees Holocaust SNF rail payout with the US. The two sides announced a $60 million compensation fund paid for by the French government on Friday. Because remember, this railroad wants to build the $2.6 billion high speed. There's the French railroad. They want to build it in Florida. 2011, we told you what the problem was. Finally, in 2014, they announced $60 million compensation fund. I bring this up because I applaud the Jewish community. I applaud them for saying, you must pay for what you did, for what you were complicit in. I applaud them. I lament, though, if our community, doesn't have the same gumption to do the same thing.
Now, Reverend,
right now, in the city of Cincinnati, we've elected 8 Democrats on council, a Democratic mayor. Evanston, Illinois, where Northwestern University is giving reparations checks right now to Black citizens for their history of discrimination. Asheville, North Carolina, for all you listening to me, you can just Google any of those. Google Asheville, North Carolina, put in the word reparations. Their city council voted unanimously to give reparations to Black people in Asheville, North Carolina. Evanston, Illinois is already giving out checks to Black people in Evanston for historic discrimination. Here we are with all of this, I guess, progressive Democrats. To me, there's no better opportunity than a railroad company built by our ancestors who's benefited from slave labor, money coming into the city. So that was our first position. We took that position to the city. There was really no money in it for the Black community. There are these buckets. They said all this money has to go to infrastructure. We didn't want the money from the railroad sale for infrastructure. We're saying if you sold the railroad and there was more money coming in than you had before, then that's less money you had to use from your current budget, and that money should be targeted towards repairing the racist policies that you've had in the past. But they weren't willing to do that. So we became a hard no on the sale of the railroad. And then understanding, here's another thing. Norfolk Southern owns another company, and it's up here on the screen. Norfolk Southern owns a company called T-Cubed. And here's what it says. T-Cubed, which means Thoroughbred Technology and Telecommunications, is a subsidiary of Norfolk Southern Corporation, one of the nation's premier railroads. The company uses Norfolk Southern's extensive rail network of more than 21,000 miles of right-of-way and other infrastructure to participate in the telecommunications business. Okay, so they lay fiber optics along rail lines. So watch this. When you go to where it says about T-Cubes, they show you a map. And I don't know if people can really see this or not, but the lines you see are where they currently have high-speed fiber. Where you don't see it is between Cincinnati and Chattanooga. That's why they want it. They're already running the train on the line. They're paying us to do that. They want this green line right here ends. Chattanooga, this is where our track ends. It goes from Cincinnati to Chattanooga. Norfolk Southern knows that by owning this, they're going to make a whole lot more money. The city of Cincinnati, it boggles my mind that we don't see this, that as we own it, if Norfolk Southern wants to lay fiber optic rail, they got to pay us to do it. It is short-sighted. And then finally, I'll share this. I never wanted to become a expert in trains, but I had to subscribe to something called trains.com to read all these articles. So I subscribed. I paid whatever I paid. So listen to this. This is from an article in trains.com. Norfolk Southern officials say it's always better to own critical rail lines than to lease them due to the uncertainty around future lease costs. As part of this transaction, Norfolk Southern will own 9,500 acres of land that the railroad is built upon. So let's again just take the first sentence. Norfolk Southern officials say it's always better to own critical rail lines than to lease them. They understand how important it is to own it. Why don't we? And then the final thing I'll share is this. This is from the CEO of Norfolk Southern. The Cincinnati Southern Railway is a critical artery linking the Midwest and the Southeast and plays an important role in our powerful network that serves more than half the U.S. population, Alan Shaw said. This agreement sets the framework for Norfolk Southern to own a core line in our network in perpetuity. In perpetuity means like forever, allowing us to advance our strategic objectives of improving service, enhancing productivity, and creating an even stronger platform for accelerated growth, all while eliminating uncertainty around the future control of the line and lease costs. This is a good deal for them, and it may be a good deal for some in our city, because what's going to happen if this thing sells and the money can only be spent on existing infrastructure? All that will do is increase the racial wealth gap that already exists in this city. Because we know, and we lament it all the time, when you see people doing this road work, doing the sidewalks, what we always say, we don't see a lot of us. So there are some people out there, they want this thing to sell because they say, we're the ones who build the infrastructure. We do all this work. For them, this is a gravy train. We're saying, and the other thing is this, they didn't talk to, there's a 5-member unelected board who decided this. So we did all that voting, we put people in place, and they came to our churches, vote for me, and we did. But there's a 5-member unelected board that makes this decision. There's a 5-member unelected board that would hold these dollars. The city won't even get the $1.6 billion. This 5-member unelected board would have the money. Now it's a bad deal.
Now, are these the members that you're referring to? Paul Muthing,
yes.
Vice President Charles Lucan, yep. Paul Sylvester, Mark Mallory, and Amy Murray?
Yes, yep, those are they.
That's a very interesting list. Now, before, I'm just going to ask this quick question. We have at least 5 city council persons that are Black. And of course, including the Vice Mayor, Jan Michelle, who is also apparently for the sale of the railroad. Why do you think, if your concern is that that African Americans are not going to get a piece of the pie, can you take that picture off, please?
Sure.
Or unless you're finished with that.
I'm done.
Thanks. So if they're not concerned, that Black people are not going to get a piece of the pie, then well, I guess I should ask, why is that?
Well, I won't speak for them. I won't say that they're not. I'm sure they will say they're concerned. I'm sure they will say. Here's the problem: there was an expectation, since there were no community forums, there were no community meetings, there was no discussion with the NAACP, with any groups that I know of about this. They just thought that this was going to be easy and a done deal. They thought, like Laura Ingraham talked about LeBron James, he said, just shut up and dribble. They thought we were just going to shut up and vote. They thought that no person, I guess, of African American descent would say anything. And for the most part, most people didn't. And they're following the mayor. I mean, the mayor seems that he's pushing this. And if you just saw the I-Team report that came on tonight, which was pretty damaging about the mayor on this subject. And so what they have done, those who have talked to us, is that they've apologized. They say, well, you're right, we didn't talk to you. And you're right, we should have talked to you. And we're going to try to come up with some numbers to make this better for the Black community. But right now it's too late. I think the best thing now is for us to vote no and then start over. This time do it right.
All right, we have some more questions coming to you from our co-panelists.
Sure.
Kathy Johnson.
Okay. You've already answered our one question, so I will go to the second question. The city of Cincinnati has owned the railroad since the 1800s. When did the lease amount become $25 million?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it started. I just know right now it's at 25 million. And if we are successful in stopping the sale, that lease amount goes up to 37 million and possibly 40 million. So Norfolk Southern, if they can't buy it, the lease does increase. So the lease amount will go from 25 million to 37 million, which puts about an extra 12 million into the coffers, which is not a bad deal. And you still own the asset. I mean, it's almost a win-win. So you can continue to lease it. And then if you again want to sell it down the line, this time at least you got to talk to us. The other power, if we're successful on this no vote, is that we do build a power base. We do earn some respect. Because right now, the power of our voice, the power of our vote is no right now. It's not yes. The yes vote just gives your power away.
Thank you.
Just a reminder that you are listening to the joint Coalition for Just Hamilton County and the National Council of Negro Women political forum this evening. Tonight, we're focusing primarily on the issues. Right now, we have panelist Reverend Damon Lynch, who is opposed to the railroad. He's part of a coalition that has formed to aggressively oppose the railroad. We were supposed to be joined by Councilman Scotty Johnson, who, for whatever reason, has not yet joined us this evening. And he was the only council person that was actually opposed to the railroad. And so I was really expecting him to be here this evening, but he has not yet joined us. You all, I believe, have the ability to enter a question into the chat. If you would like to pose a question to any of our panelists this evening, please put it in the chat, and we will ask your question of our panelists. I also would ask that you would go, we're live streaming on Coalition for Just Hamilton County Facebook page. I would ask that you would go to your individual social media pages and share the forum with your page. And I would ask someone for the National Council of Negro Women if they could share the page as well from our page to make sure that this information goes broad. This is not the last forum. We will take opposing issues in the subsequent forum. Mr. Kathy Tyler.
Good evening, Pastor Lynch. Thank you for your participation this evening. Next question is, when does the current lease expire, and how have the funds been allocated thus far
Current
in terms of benefiting the community?
believe the current lease expires in 2024, 2025. And the funds are for infrastructure, but the funds are specifically targeted towards the building and rebuilding of the infrastructure in our city.
So I want to follow up with the funds that we receive through the for infrastructure that from the ARPA. Has that been added to those funds?
Yes, has been added to those funds. The city puts about almost 65, $66 billion, or $66 million from the general fund. It puts it into the capital fund towards paying for infrastructure costs. And then you get about 26 million from the railroad, currently railroad sale lease now. If their projection is if it sells, that 26 million may become 50 million, because they will invest the 1.6, pay a fund manager to invest the 1.6. They'd have to pay that fund manager between $8 million and $16 million a year. So you've got money now, you got to pay somebody to invest the money. So that 26 may go to 50. All right. But again, you've sold the railroad, you don't own it anymore. And the state has hamstrung them that it can only be used for existing infrastructure. They can't build anything new. So anything that's already existing, they can, redo it but it can't be for any of their quote unquote pet projects. So you had the money that we voted on when we voted for the Metro deal, which was for new infrastructure. You got this. And now the city's saying, and the mayor's trying to scare everybody, we've got $400 million in deferred infrastructure costs. Well, there's a stadium down in the West End where they play soccer. And they gave them $213 million for infrastructure. For four billionaires to build a stadium that we don't own, the city paid $213 million for the infrastructure. And now you come to us crying, saying we've got a deficit of $400 million in infrastructure. And so supposedly now we're going to have to live with potholes while they have this brand new stadium that they gave them $213 million of our tax dollars. So again, I think the power of our vote right now is no, and we can revisit it, but they have to do better by the Black community.
Now, the question is, my question, are you finished, Mr. Tyler?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So my question would be, why now? It doesn't sound like the Black community is getting any of this money now. What would be different? And do you really feel, Reverend Lynch, that we have any leverage whatsoever? I mean, when has the Black community ever been a significant consideration in the grand scheme of things? And is it really realistic to think that somehow we're going to be able to carve some money out of that revenue, whether it's sold or not sold? Because are we getting any of it now?
No, I think why now for me is because now is probably the best chance we've had in a long time by withholding our vote. We're 30% of the electorate in the city. We're 42% of the city and 30% of the electorate. And I think when our vote matters, if we can make it matter this time, I think it'll matter. Obviously they want the sale. Norfolk Southern wants to buy it. For some reason, city wants to sell it. And if we stand together just this one time, along with the others who are also saying no, then I think clearly the time and what we also have to do as a Black community is to determine what is it that we really want. So two things: we stand together against the sale, so they have to respect our vote and respect our voice. But then our voice has to come together and say, well, what is it we want? We can't, I've been part of the groups saying, what do we want? Justice. When do we want it now? Okay, that's not where we are right now. We have to be more specific than saying justice. So, because we know what they want. They're clear. They already told us we want a new arena. We want a new convention center. We want a new convention center hotel, blah, blah, blah. And they always want big things. I mean, they just want these BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. I just want to know from us, what do we want? I mean, you know, can we at least get a bowling alley, a movie theater, or a skating rink? Because we don't have anything. But we got to come up with what we want. We know we want affordable housing. That's issue 24. Issue 24 people are also part of our group. So it's no on 22, yes on 24. But other than that, if we're powerful enough to stop this sale and we show our power, then we've got to come back and leverage that power. So if you ever want to sell it again, you've got to come through us. Because this time, brothers and sisters, they went around everybody. They went around everybody. I don't care if you were a Baptist Ministers Conference, NAACP, blah, blah. They didn't care. They didn't come talk to anybody. And that's just unacceptable.
All right, Reverend Lynch, I finally found these questions. An anonymous attendee asked, what type of reparations would Black people be due regarding this sale? Is it for families, the overall Black community? Who would hold the money back? And are the average Black citizens involved in the conversation? Because I heard you mention a lot of pastors and nonprofits are part of the conversation. That's an anonymous question from the attendees.
Yeah. It would, well, you know, it's like, I'll answer this question because it's something that I'm pushing, and it's not. So in the book that I wrote, Becoming Joshua, I talk about reparations every single day. I've talked about reparations forever. I've talked about reparations from the 400 years that we've been here. So this is not a new conversation for me. So it would be for the Black community, because the other thing, you know, with the concern Anonymous has is you know, who's going to get the money, the Black preachers, blah, blah, blah. You know, we hear that all the time. You know, I forgot how the question was, is the average person. Well, who's not the average person? You know, so it's the Black community. There are three things that I talk about when it comes to reparations. One is we need the money to set up what's called individual development accounts, IDAs. Anybody can type it in on your Google, individual development accounts, IDAs. Because I just told you the median net worth in Cincinnati for whites is $77,000. That means they probably got some equity in their home, whatever. The median net worth for Black people in Cincinnati in 2023 is $1,500. All right, that's crazy. All right, so IDA, somehow we've got to take the least of these among us, the poorest among us, and raise up their worth, their net worth. IDAs are where people learn how to save a few dollars, and every dollar you save is matched by at least a $3 to $4 match. And the real crazy thing is if you type in individual development accounts and then put Ohio, you'll see they're mostly been done in rural areas. So poor white folk are getting this opportunity. IDA. Secondly, education. We need to set up what's called supplementary schools. The other thing I challenge you to type in, it's in England. There's an article entitled, Every Black Child Needs Supplementary Schools. Supplementary schools, they usually meet on Saturdays. It's where little Black children learn history, heritage, culture. Most people don't know, Jewish kids go to what's called Sunday school. We know they worship on Saturday, the Sabbath day, but the Jewish community has something called Sunday school. And it's not like the Sunday school we have in our Black churches. Sunday school is where they go on Sundays. They learn history, heritage, culture, and their language. We need supplementary schools. And then third, we need affordable housing. We need to help people who want to own homes. So to Anonymous's question, what kind of reparations are we talking? And again, this is just Damon. Because again, we could come together as a community and everybody could say they want a check, whatever. But this is me talking. lift up the least among us in individual development accounts. And part of being part of an IDA is that you have to take classes on financial management and learn how to handle money. And the money can be used for maybe buy a car to get you to work, down payment on a house, whatever we decide as a community. So to Anonymous's question, and we meet every Sunday right now at 5:00 at the church for the vote on no on 22. And Anonymous is welcome, as everybody's welcome to come be a part.
Last question. This is from attendee Roy Jones, and he would like to know what specifically was reported in that I-team report. What was of significance?
The conflict of interest that the mayor has. The fact that Norfolk Southern is paying for this campaign, and the mayor is pushing this campaign. And one of the questions that the reporter asked the mayor, he said, Jens, what's his name? Jens Sunmoller. Jens Sunmoller is like the treasurer of the campaign. He's running this thing for Norfolk Southern, but he's also the treasurer for the mayor. He's the mayor's treasurer for his campaign.
Oh no!
And so then the reporter asked him that, and he says, the mayor says, Jens is not my treasurer. And the guy goes right on the computer and says, I'm looking at the document he is your treasurer. And then the mayor says, oh, okay, well, yeah, he is my treasurer. So it's a clear conflict of interest. Christopher Smitherman is on there. And he states, that this just doesn't pass the smell test. They are all, this thing is so, it's so rotten, the whole deal. So you can look it up. I actually posted it on social media. It's sad. But what the mayor is doing is what all mayors do. They want a signature project. So Cranley can say, I got FC Stadium. Mark Mallory says, I got you a streetcar. Charlie Lucan says, I cleaned up over the road. They all want a signature project. And I guess for AFTAB, it's like, I sold your railroad. So.
All right, Reverend Lynch.
All right, I appreciate it. I hope you guys, I don't know if you all make a decision, if you vote or what you do with this. I know you're probably nonpartisan. But again, we meet every Sunday at 5. Sister Leslie Jones is part of our group, and we're outnumbered, outmanned, but we're gonna make this work. We're gonna do this for our city, for our people.
All right.
Well, thanks for letting me talk.
All right. Thank you so much. Good evening. All right.
You.
That was Reverend Damon Lynch. He was supposed to be joined tonight by Councilman Scotty Johnson, who did not join us this evening for whatever reason. But he was scheduled for tonight. But Reverend Damon Lynch actually did an excellent job from the no proponents, or the proponents of no against the railroad. Now, I made it clear at the beginning, this is partisan. Now, later on, the coalition, we reserve the right. The Coalition for Just Hamilton County may take a position, and probably will take a position. However, the NCNW will not, because again, it's a nonpartisan 501 organization. And so, but tonight's coalition forum is nonpartisan in order to make sure that we just get out the information and the education that will help everybody to make a decision. I'm a member of both groups. And so with that, again, we want to invite everyone, please go to the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, share this forum to your social media page so that other people can get this information as well. Now we're going to turn our attention. We were running about 15 minutes when we got scheduled. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, Scotty Johnson is on, by the way.
Well, unless you want to defer some of your time, because you were next.
That's fine. That's fine. I can defer just a little bit of my time.
Okay, all right, because we were moving towards the issue of reproductive rights. So we are going to allow Councilman Johnson to come in this evening. It is important.
Johnson, if you can come on screen, you are unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Yes.
I am so sorry. Allow me to apologize. This has just been a bad evening, but I wanted to make sure. I want to please forgive me. It's been a bad evening, but having said that, I made a commitment, and I'm so sorry for delaying the program any further. But I'm here now, and like I said, if let me say this: I did hear Judge Hunter talk about the fact that I am the only no on Cincinnati City Council when it comes to the railroad, and two major reasons why is that I do not believe that we as legislators did a good job in making sure, first and foremost, that the citizens were informed. We blew it from that realm. I started asking for forms back in February, and I was being told those forms are on the way. Then in April, the forms are on the way. June, the forms are on the way. I should have not asked. I should have demanded forms, information forms. That didn't happen. I take part of the responsibility for the failure in informing the citizens of Cincinnati as a legislator. In addition to that, I do not believe that, first of all, like I said, the lack of information, and then in addition to that, the truth be told, the railroad board will determine how much money the city of Cincinnati actually receives. That determination will come as a result of the railroad board will determine how much money gets reinvested to protect the 1.6 billion. So in turn, the railroad board has all of the say-so as to what the citizens of Cincinnati will receive. You're at the railroad board, along with those at City Hall that believe in this, are saying, we want you to promote it, but in turn, we don't trust you with the money to serve the citizens of Cincinnati. Now, politicians out of City Hall have done themselves no favors in the past or even now when it comes to making sure that resources are available in all 52 of the neighborhoods. This is not being done with the sale of the railroads. This disservice, when you talk about just rec centers and paved roads, that is insulting to me. We got to be talking about economic development in underserved neighborhoods. When you use terms like once in a lifetime, you use terms like generational, there's no way in my good conscience I can make a decision in 2023 and then still live here in Cincinnati in 2033 and see some of our communities still looking the same. I am working with the Vice Mayor, Jan Michelle Kearney, right now to move legislation to make sure equity comes with the sale of this railroad. We are working on developing an entire new department in the city of Cincinnati that does nothing but look at equity. That has nothing to do with you having a contract with the city of Cincinnati. It has nothing to do with you having business with the city of Cincinnati. It has everything to do with us looking at equity in the city of Cincinnati. I am spearheading that legislation so we do not turn around and get left behind again because of a major decision. Very quickly, we are looking at the Rising 15. The Rising 15 deals with the 15 most underserved communities in the city of Cincinnati receiving monies for economic development as a result first of all, not as a result of the railroad, but looking at economic development in those 15 neighborhoods. So I am a no. I'm a no because I don't see equity, and I'm a no because I feel as though the Black community specifically was disrespected, the opportunity to have those conversations and inform them did not take place. That's just something that I cannot. What keeps me up at night is making sure, as a legislator, that all 52 neighborhoods are served, and I don't see that coming with that. You got to show us more than rec centers and paved streets. It's almost insulting. I will say this also, and I said it at another forum. You didn't even take the time to go to the oldest civil rights organization in the country and have a conversation with the NAACP. In turn, that showed me that you took the Black vote for granted, and I can't sit idly by and just allow that to happen.
Question, Councilman Johnson. Okay, I heard you mention that you were working with Vice Mayor Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney to, I guess, come up with ways to include the African American community, if I heard you correctly. So is that for current revenues that are coming by way of the lease of the railroad, or are you talking about some future time where you might agree to the sale of the railroad? I just want to be clear.
I do not agree with the sale of the railroad.
Okay.
But I do not agree with that. I'm saying when we talk about the rising 15, I would want something in place far after I leave that dais. Because in that manner, if it's just a temporary fix, then we know business will go back to usual and communities being left behind. This Office of Equity will actually not have anything to do. We will not have any say-so over this Office of Equity. That will be under the city manager's office. That way it gets the politics out of the way. And those communities that have had trouble developing and trouble with economic development, the city will be assigned to make sure that every resource available is given to those rising 15s to move economic development.
Now, I got to ask you this question. I don't know whether you can answer it or not. Since there is a very large contingency of Black people on this current Cincinnati City Council, why aren't they taking the same positions regarding being concerned that no one came to the African American community to ask our opinion, to let us know what was going on, to talk about how it was going to benefit the Black community? Why are you the only African American on City Council taking this position?
Because, Judge, to be quite honest, that's a question you would have to ask them all personally. But the reason why I'm willing to stand alone is because it's something my father told me. He said, son, if you're going to serve in that capacity, even when I became a police officer, if you're not willing to stand alone, you're not ready to lead. And I think it's incumbent upon me as a Black council person, as a Black man, to make sure that the Black community is better than it was before I got there. The police department, we've come a long way, but we're still not there yet. But I believe it was better. It is better than it was when I got there. Taking stances, apologizing in 2001 when we knew we were out of order on how we were treating Black citizens. And I pray that same advancement, Judge, takes that same needle moves forward as a result of me sitting on Cincinnati City Council.
Thank you. Do you have any further comments?
No, like I said, just please accept my apology. It's been, like I said, I do. I'm sorry about that, but I just want people to know, I want all to know that this thing I don't take lightly. We got to make sure in our Black communities we're getting more than rec centers and paved streets. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure that happens.
All right, Councilman Scotty Johnson, thanks so much for joining us here this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
All righty. With that, we're going to turn our attentions again. You are tuned into the co-political forum, co-sponsored by the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, as well as the National Council of Negro Women Cincinnati section here. And we invite everyone to go to the Facebook page, Coalition for Just Hamilton County, and share the live stream of tonight's forum. It will be permanently on social media. And we are encouraging you to share it, because the information and the education that we're sharing through this nonpartisan forum this evening is extremely important. And we hope that it will help people to be able to go to the polls to be able to make an intelligent vote. Now, mind you, tonight we are talking to persons who were in support of or were against the sale of the railroad. And we are working on a second forum where we will have the proponents of that issue. Now we're going to move to affordable housing this evening. And I don't know if our guests are here yet. We're supposed to be joined by Robin Wright Pierce, as well as Brian Gary. They are here to discuss. We're flipping the issues tonight to talk about the amendment to the Cincinnati City Charter regarding the issue on affordable housing. Again, these are proponents of, and we will bring the opposing side later. Our guest here, and again, we're looking for Robin Pearson Wright, as well as Brian Gary. Yeah, she's here.
Okay,
I just made her okay, and I'm looking for Brian Gary. I don't see him as of yet. And if he's here, he'll have to let me know.
Yeah, I don't see Brian Gary either, unless he is on the telephone, but if he
all right. Okay. All right, welcome to our panelists this evening, Robin Wright Pierce. Thank you for joining us. And you are a proponent of the issue dealing with affordable housing. So I'm going to allow you just to introduce yourself and the position that you hold, as well as the position you're taking on the issue. Good evening, and thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. As Pastor Tracy Hunter shared, my name is Robin Wright Pierce. I'm one of the co-directors of Cincinnati Action for Housing Now, the coalition behind Issue 24. I am also the First Lady of Beloved Community Church, led by Pastor Nelson Pierce Jr., located in Mount Airy. And I am excited to speak with you all tonight about this important issue of affordable housing. I'm going to take a moment and share my screen, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm here tonight to invite you all to say yes on issue 24 for truly affordable housing, because we believe that we can create a Cincinnati that works better for all of us, and that issue 24 helps to get us there. Just so that you know, Cincinnati Action for Housing Now is a growing coalition of more than 24, more than 30 organizations across the city who are committed to ensuring that all individuals, regardless our income, have access to safe and stable housing, and that we have a place that we can afford to call home so that we can live in vibrant communities. As you can see here on the screen, there is a wide variety of organizations a part of this coalition that has helped to bring forward issue 24, work that has been going on now for a long, long time, leading us to this point. At the core of issue 24 is the funding of the creation and preservation of truly affordable housing, pathways to home ownership, and safe and vibrant communities. What we are doing is mobilizing to pass issue 24 because it's going to bring us one step closer to creating a Cincinnati that works better for all of us. Our ballot measure will put a 0.3% earnings tax restoration. It will restore our earnings tax back to what it was in 2020, put it on next year's ballot so that we can generate the revenue needed to create funding for truly affordable housing. Together, we can generate between $40 and $50 million a year to ensure that all of us have a safe and stable place to call home. What's important about this is this tax restoration, it's a return to a familiar tax rate for us. So it's not taking us to something that we haven't paid previously, but also it'll cost the average household less than $11 a month. But will generate, again, $40 to $50 million to invest in truly affordable housing. It's issue 24 is important. I mean, you all know, living in the city of Cincinnati, that housing costs are skyrocketing. We believe that housing is a basic need and really the foundation of all aspects of our lives. And so what's important is that we know that rents rose more in the city of Cincinnati in the last year than it did in any country in the entire United States. In fact, we also know from recent data that Cincinnati, since 2020, has been in the top 5 cities in the country of the fastest growing costs of rent in the United States. So every year our rents jump more than almost every city in the entire United States. This is creating a crisis, particularly in the Black community, that is really quite unsustainable. 1 in 3 of us, because of this, cannot afford our current housing costs. This is in part due, you all may have heard of a 2017 study from the Community Builders Institute at Xavier University, sponsored by LISC in part, that showed that we are short somewhere between 20 and 30,000 units of truly affordable housing in our city. Most of those units that we are short are for those of us at the lowest income. We know that 54% of those of us making less than $30,000 a year are spending more than half of our income on housing. This is particularly true in the Black community, where we know that more than 50% of our community actually live in households making less than $30,000 a year. What's also important here on the screen is that since 2010, there's been a 35% decrease in housing affordable at those income levels. It's the only category of housing that has dropped that significantly over this time span. Black families, as I said, are hardest hit. So for me, this issue 24 is a housing justice issue, but it's a racial justice issue. As I was saying, 50% of Black families in the city of Cincinnati have incomes less than $30,000 a year, which means that a significant portion of our community is struggling with housing, more so even than the broader community. And quite frankly, our incomes in our community aren't keeping up, right? So housing costs are skyrocketing, the quantity of affordable housing is declining, incomes are not keeping up. The top 5 fastest growing occupations in Cincinnati metropolitan statistical area are 4 of the top 5 pay less than $30,000 a year, right? And so the most highly populated jobs in our community don't pay enough for folks to live off of. And then federal money is getting harder and harder to get. Federal investments from HUD coming down over the decades have declined for all cities. And so local communities have to fill those gaps. And that's what issue 24 actually does. It helps to fill that gap in funding that is available to create truly affordable housing. And so issue 24 is our solution. By restoring our earnings tax to its 2020 levels from 1.8% to 2.1%, we can create an ongoing and targeted revenue source to fund truly affordable housing. As I said, it'll cost most households less than $11 a month, but will generate 30 to 50, 40 to $50 million a year toward truly affordable housing. So just so you know what's in issue 24, what does it do? Where does it actually go? The first thing it does is what I've said already. It will allow us to invest in housing for all. By putting that tax restoration on the next year's ballot, it's actually going to require Cincinnati, the city council, to pass an ordinance levying that 0.3% tax restoration and requiring that that money be used for affordable housing. It then targets where the funding goes, right? And so we really want to make sure that we're not just generating revenue, but we're targeting that revenue to help those of us who need it most. And so how that funding breaks down, at least 65% of the money generated from issue 24 goes to create rental homes available and affordable for folks at 30% or lower the area median income. These are those households I've been talking about. Folks making around or less than $30,000 a year. This is where more than 1 in 3 of all households in Cincinnati exists, and where almost all of our affordable housing shortage in our community is. A 2-bedroom funded with this money for this price range will rent, for example, for no more than $645 a month, including utilities. But we know that housing is needed across all incomes, and so we actually go beyond that. And so up to 30% can be used for one of these 3 spaces. Emergency housing services, so providing help with emergency rental assistance, eviction legal support, foreclosure legal support, shelter support for emergency housing needs. Housing affordable to folks up to 50% of the area median income. So this is for households making up to around $50,000 a year. What's important at this price range is that 70% of Black households actually live within this price range. So already, even up to this price range, we've covered most Black households in the city and a majority of renting households in our community. Just an example of what rent might look like for a unit funded with this money, a 2-bedroom in this range will cost no more than $1,045 a month, including utilities. And then the other part of this is home ownership, right? Because Black folks in Cincinnati actually have an extraordinary but low national average rate of home ownership. And so we want to make sure that we're also funding that. So up to 80% of the area median income, folks are eligible for services related to home ownership, so down payment assistance. But also, if you already own a home and you're within this income range, then you also can get help with indebtedness, critical repairs and maintenance, which is critical for our seniors on fixed incomes. As home maintenance costs get out of control, but you're on a fixed income, it can be hard to keep up with that and maintain your property. And so this pot of money would help with that as well. And so there's an additional 5%, as you see, all 100% added here, 65% for homes with the lowest income, 30% for moderate income folks for homes, services, and home ownership. And then no more than 5% can go toward administrative costs because someone has to be paid to actually maintain this funding. And so what's important is that 61% of households in the city of Cincinnati overall would qualify for one of the housing services created with this revenue. So we're talking about a radical, massive investment into our city. And importantly, 80% of Black households will directly qualify for one of the housing services created by this fund. And so again, for me, this is really a radical racial justice investment into our community, helping us to have greater stability in our families and our neighborhoods and our communities and all the things that come with that, right? And so this is a really revolutionary investment. The third thing that issue 24 does, which is important, is it helps to give power to the people. So the city of Cincinnati, according to the amendment, oversees the funding, but in consultation with a community advisory board that has to be made up of folks who have experienced homelessness in the past, folks who currently reside in subsidized housing or units that are funded by the money, nonprofit and for-profit housing developers, as well as community housing advocacy organizations and representation. And so we really wanted to make sure that people who are have the lived experience as well as the professional experience are collaborating with the city in terms of how the money is distributed. The amendment also requires the city of Cincinnati to have at least 2 public meetings that any and everyone in the city can and ought to attend in order to understand what's happening, get feedback, and give input each year. And so just so you know about the funding source, and I'm wrapping up here shortly, this is a tax restoration. What's important about this, because you all may have already started getting Vote No mailers, which are the Cincinnati business community has invested somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 in the Vote No campaign. And we don't have that money, right? I'm volunteering, for instance, as one of the campaign leads. And so we are definitely a grassroots coalition of folks who are piecing this all together because of our desires to do well for our community. And so you're probably already seeing these ads and getting the mailers, and they're going to tell you that we already have too much tax burden. But as you see here, that's actually not true. Cincinnati has the lowest earnings tax rate of any city in the state of Ohio and of most cities in our entire region, at the 1.8%. And even with this restoration to 2.1%, we will still have the lowest earnings tax rate of any city in the state of Ohio and of all major comparable cities in our region. And so this is important because the idea that we won't have a competitive business edge is just not true. This amendment does not jeopardize that. It also does not, despite what you may be seeing in the advertisements, jeopardize current jobs for city employees, because this doesn't tap into at all the current budget that is funding those positions. This will generate its own revenue source that does not in any way impact human services or any revenue paid toward employees of the city. And that's really important because we care about our city as well. And so we want to make sure we created an amendment that really will help us and not hurt us. The amendment also prioritizes equity and justice. So there's a provision in the amendment that requires that investments prioritize members of protected classes and historically marginalized groups. And so folks like Black folks who have been discriminated against through redlining and displacement would get first priority. There's even a clause in the amendment that requires that a set number of units have to be created that is accessible to folks with disability, which is really, really important. To make sure that this truly works for all of us. This is important because each year we have had a history over the last decade of actually losing more affordable housing units than we create and fund each year. And so this amendment will also reverse that trend. Our estimates show that somewhere between 400 and 700 new units of affordable housing will be created or maintained annually if this passes. Will really start to make a dent in our affordable housing shortage. And so the invitation is for you all to join this movement. It really is a movement because, like I said, it's grassroots. We don't have corporate funding. We don't have, fancy investments coming in. We're just everyday people who understand that this is a crisis we can't wait for. At a time when the city of Cincinnati Public Schools has a crisis of homelessness of our students, where 1 in 10 students will experience homelessness at some point this school year. And they have even declared homelessness as one of the biggest challenges facing the school district in our kids' education. We can't afford to wait. We have a chance to do all the things that we need to do for our community to really make a dent, a large-scale radical investment toward housing and racial justice for our communities. And so I hope that you will join us in voting yes on 24 to do what is needed for our community. And I'll take questions at this point.
All right, well, I'm going to actually invite Brian Gary, who has also joined us at this point, to also give him time to take his position on this issue. I know that Brian Gary has been a fighter against homelessness for as long as I've known him, and that's been decades. And so, Brian, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love your coalition. Of course, I love supporting you. You know that, Judge Hunter and Robin Wright. You did an amazing job. I mean, what I'm going to add to that is the perspective of a street worker and a person who's been formerly homeless. The families that we receive calls from every day, the stories of mothers with special needs children that are living on our streets, mothers of 5. I mean, these are just calls we get every day. And the problem is a lack of affordable housing, because these moms living literally on our streets. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, I have 5 children. They're all over 18, but having 5 children that are all under 12, and you are living out in the cold, in the wet. And it's absolutely due to the policies of our city. In other words, it is sickening to me to see the fake progressive politicians who talk about equity, but their equity is like spray paint thin. Like if you literally scratch the surface, you're going to come upon basically like a Republican style politician. And they portray them. The big problem is, I don't have a problem with Republicans if they are honestly, present themselves as a Republican. But the problem is when you present yourself as a Democrat. I mean, I was in the meeting a couple Mondays ago when the Democratic Party voted against issue 24. It's so sickening to see Republicans running the Democratic Party. Like literally the person who is overseeing the Cincinnati Democratic Party, the co-chair, is a lobbyist for the Linder family and orchestrated this whole thing against issue 24 for the Democrats to vote. I mean, even the Republicans didn't vote against issue 24, to my knowledge. But the Democrats, who are supposed to be our people, literally it's on their handouts at the polls. So this is what we're fighting. We're fighting a machine, machine politics that, I'm sorry, I joined a little bit late. I didn't have the link handy. Robin, you may have gone over this, but what I'm saying is, as an example, I received a call. They said, "What's at 810 Plum Street, across the street from City Hall?" I was like, another lobbyist that is, I don't know if you all saw this, but if you get a chance, just go to WCPO.com and look at the I-Team investigation of AFTAB Puraval. This was released tonight. And he is sitting there lying. But ultimately, the point that I'm making is his treasurer, which came out in this YouTube, you can go on YouTube, WCPO, his treasurer is at 810 Plum Street. His treasurer is Jens Stuttmuller, and he is the one putting out the no on 24. The mayor's campaign manager. This is how sick the politics and the corruption are in Cincinnati. I mean, they sit there and say that they're for, affordable housing. And affordable housing is in my blood. My mother was the president of the Affordable Housing Advocates, and she wrote the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and she personally handed it to David Mann when he made the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And let me just put in a little plug here. So Jens is also running the Yes on 22 campaign out of the same building, 810 Plum Street. Issue 24 limits the way the railroad money is spent. The railroad money, I was at the press conference when John Cranley first put the $700,000 into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And at the same time, he put, you know, I'm trying to remember the exact amount. I think it was 750,000 into the Man's Hotel, the traditionally African-American hotel in Walnut Hills, to rehab it, to keep it affordable, which it is super affordable housing, truly affordable housing in Walnut Hills. Guess where that money came from? You know where that money came from? It came from the railroad. The first money to go into the trust fund from the railroad. Repairing the Man's Hotel from the railroad. So they want to restrict it now to only being used for, so-called infrastructure. But what I'm getting at is it's previously been used for affordable housing. So these issues are connected. The same people who created issue 22 are also the same people who are putting out these false, inaccurate mailers against issue 24. This is how sick, we know the PG was just sentenced and all the things that, people getting bags of cash and all the types of things that our machine politics are doing. So just basically, if they're talking and their lips are moving, then that's how you know they're lying.
So
I hate.
I have a question.
Yes.
Robin, as well as Brian, and that is, I guess that's one of my questions. Is I see, and it's an excellent presentation that Robin just provided us. It was very detailed, it was excellent. But my question is, we're supposed to have money for affordable housing. And I remember the last election, because we always do, political campaigns. We do them, I've been doing them for decades. But I specifically remember that the last, maybe it was 2020, when the majority of council that's now there were elected, as well as the mayor, that was the number one issue that was being discussed, was affordable housing and what they were going to do. So here we are 2 years late. Well, where's this money going? What about the TIF account? That money that was supposed to be created, and like you just said, the Affordable Housing Trust. Why do we have to keep trying to create different mechanisms in order to increase affordable housing? But once that happens, it never goes towards affordable housing. And I guess that's what my concern is. Even during your presentation, Robin, I noticed that you said there will be an advisory board. But as well as I do, an advisory board has no authority. They have no power. And so whoever actually has the power still makes the decisions. The advisory board, they can ignore them if they want to.
So that's a great question, Pastor Tracy. So what's important to understand about issue 24 is it doesn't, so that 65% actually goes into that original Affordable Housing Trust Fund that Brian's mom helped to create. And so it's actually not creating a whole different system. It's actually investing in the fund that currently only has $1,300 in it, that was donated by the Cincinnati Association the year after, a few months after the fund was created. The money that the city of Cincinnati has said has gone toward affordable housing has gone into an affordable housing leveraged fund of funds in other locations, but not into that original trust fund. What is important about this initiative, and to your point about accountability, right? Because that is the crux of all of this. That's the crux of the conversation earlier around issue 22. That's what Brian is elevating, the lack of transparency and ethical dealings of the same mailers against 24 are coming from the same location as the mailers for 22 that the mayor was just publicly seen to be not being truthful about who's behind those things in that Channel 9 news story today. And so there's so much of that. And so what issue 24 does, the amendment actually outlines what income levels have to benefit from the resources. And so that first 65% goes into that original Affordable Housing Trust Fund that the city has neglected and is mandated to go to those income levels, right? And that has not been the case. So the city of Cincinnati has, through leveraging those public and private investments into that larger fund of funds, most of their resources has gone toward higher income, moderate level income housing, which is why they'll say, we just funded affordable housing in this neighborhood. And the people in that neighborhood are like, but I can't afford to live there. That's not affordable to who, right? Because the federal guidelines on what is considered affordable actually goes up quite high. You can invest in something that's at 100% of the area median income and call that affordable housing. But that is not truly affordable housing, which is why our tagline is truly affordable housing. And so the way that we ensure that those of us who should benefits is with those mandated levels that the money has to be used for, so that the city can't say, we're going to use this for a different level because it says that first 65% goes here, that next 30% goes to these levels, right? And so that's one of the ways that we ensure that the people, that the money goes to the community folks that it ought to go toward, is by entering that specifically into the amendment as a charter amendment to the city's charter that mandates where that goes, so that, and it goes into a particular fund to ensure that the fund also has those restrictions around it. And so that's how we ensure that accountability, because to your point, the city ultimately manages it. And so, but what's important about that community advisory board and why we added that and we're adamant that that had to be a part of it, and that it and mandated even, we even outlined that certain types of demographics have to be represented to make sure that it's not a board full of just their buddies, right? That it has to be people, everyday people like us who are able to be a part of that. It's so that accountability, so that the city has to meet with that board at least 6 times. It has to meet with the public at least twice. And so we get to have an ear to what's happening as it's happening. So the parameters are there, and then the advisory board helps hold accountability so that the alarm can be sounded if needed, so that we know we have folks who are advocating on the inside as well to make sure that the neighborhoods who need it get it, that the people who need it get it.
So
and
my
Tracy,
next,
okay,
oh, go ahead, Brian. No, go ahead, Brian. I'm getting ready to ask you. No, you go ahead and answer your, say what you're going to say, but I don't know if you can work this in. I'm just curious, since you mentioned that the Democratic Party is against this, which I didn't know. So if they're against it, I'm wondering how many of the Black City Council people or any of the City Council people, because the majority of the council is Democrat, are they also against this? Who's actually in elected officials that are actually supporting this, if anybody? But go ahead and to your point and then answer that question.
Yeah, to my knowledge, they're all against it. Especially sickening is Reggie Harris being against it and leading the fight against it, because he claims to be for affordable housing. He worked for TCB, the community builders who destroyed the West End, Lincoln Court, and Laurel Homes, and replaced it with what you see down there now. And we got a net loss of 700 units in the West End as a result of TCB. And TCB, I believe, is in the process, in fact, of selling City West in the West End. And so, we'll have to see, due to the stadium going in, what is the future of City West? That's a good question at this point. But regarding, City West in the area in the West End around there, $213 million of our tax dollars went into so-called infrastructure around the stadium. And so what I'm getting at here is that you said, where's the money? I mean, they're spending all of the money that potentially could be spent on affordable housing, and they're robbing it and stealing it and spending it instead on the lender family, the billionaires who they're friends and fund their campaigns and make them richer. So, the big question is, why would the Democratic Party be against affordable housing? Part of it is that they had a plan before any of this, before this hit the ballot. They already had a plan to take that money and to give it to the police. They had a plan that's been in the works for like 6 years to take that 0.3, like even before the vote on the bus, changing the bus funding from city to county. Even before that occurred, they already had the plan lined up. Oh, and then we're going to take the 0.3 and give it to the police. Like, that's how they were going to sell everything. So, that's why the police are against it now, because they want that money. It's all about the money. But of course, the question is, do we need affordable housing or more police? I mean, if you actually have affordable housing, obviously it will reduce the need for police officers. People who are desperate, do desperate things. And when you have enough to survive on, when you're not spending an exorbitant amount, half your income or more on your housing, or you're actually homeless, this actually reduces crime. It reduces the need to have more police, because most crimes are economic, and people who are just trying to survive. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I
can I add to that too, because I think that's really important question, right? I think we, unfortunately, our city council is, in my opinion, standing on the wrong side of history on these two issues that have been talked about so far tonight. Instead, interests are being aligned with business establishment. The case in point, when I was debating with Councilman Reggie and Councilman Jeff Premerding about issue 24 in front of a different group, and Reggie Harris's invitation was for us to wait on the Futures Commission to eventually come out with something maybe in the next few years that closes some of the needs in our community. That Futures Commission is almost exclusively CEOs of large corporations. So you have folks like the CEO of Kroger who is making this decision, right, about the future of our city. There is no civil rights organizations presence, no community organizations presence, no folks like us are in that. No housing advocates are present on this commission. It is primarily CEOs of Fifth Third Bank, Procter & Gamble, Western Southern, right? These large corporations. So you have the CEO of Kroger who's making millions of dollars a year, whereas the average Kroger employee will qualify for that first tier of housing that will be created with issue 24. So we're supposed to believe that a council, a commission of corporate leaders, some of whom are failing to adequately pay living wages to their own team members, will somehow have our best interests in mind. And I say absolutely not. Our coalition of over 30 organizations are made up of a diverse group of people, housing advocates and housing experts included, everyday folks who understand the needs of our community, who are rallying together for a reason. And so, it's unfortunate that they are on the wrong side of history on these two issues. That is really unfortunate. And for me, it can't be what I concern myself with, because I can't believe that the business leaders who have created much of the greed of corporations is the reason we have the level of inequity in our communities that we have now. I cannot wait on them and trust in them to help tell our elected leaders what we ought to do to help our communities. I would rather stand here with the people, with the advocates, with the housing folks, with the mamas who have had to live on the streets, than to stand with corporate leaders who don't even pay their own staff enough to have a living wage. And so that's what we're being asked to do. That's what our city council is asking us to do. And I am saying absolutely not. We ought to stand with the people and stand with what we know, not with these corporate leaders, and trust in us to say collectively, we need housing and we need it now. We need reparations on this railroad sale and we need it now, right? And so that's where they are, and it's unfortunate.
Minister Kathy Tyler, you have a question?
Yes, and this can be for either of our participants. Thank you so much for your participation tonight. It's deplorable how our veterans are treated and the housing situations for our veterans right now. I wanted to find out, how will issue 24 benefit veterans, or will it benefit the veterans in our community who are being forced out of housing, many of them that just can't afford the cost of paying their rent currently? How would this issue help them, please?
Yeah, this issue will absolutely help them, in part because it definitely isn't excluding them, right? It's inclusive of everyone in these income ranges who need affordable housing. My father is a Vietnam vet. He's a Marine, did 2 tours in Vietnam. He lives in College Hill, and his rent has gone up $300 in the last year, so much so that he's at a place of he doesn't know if he can afford it. And because of his experience in the military and the PTSD, he really doesn't want to move from a place that he's been in so long. And that literally led my father into the hospital with a mental breakdown. And so this is very personal, right? I definitely know the need for this for our veterans. And so this absolutely will help our veterans. It'll help our veterans because we know that veterans are statistically speaking more likely than non-veterans to end up on the streets, in part because of the impact of service. And so as we have more truly affordable housing, as we have more space for folks to go where they can afford where they live, and more services are available, that helps our veterans, absolutely.
Our city is doing almost nothing for veterans, but attacking them, similar to Jimmy, who is a mechanic down on Vine Street around the zoo near Richie's Chicken. They just stole his land and put him out, and they're suing him. The city of Cincinnati is suing him for $20,000. He's a 76-year-old Marine mechanic in Avondale who's been there for decades and decades, and that's how the city is treating him. We go around, and especially in inclement weather, when it's freezing or boiling outside, and we pick people up on the streets and get them into safe situations. Oftentimes, our bus has 80% veterans on the bus. Veterans are there are an overwhelming number of veterans who are living on our streets every day and not protected. And obviously, I should say, issue 24 will help them, provide them with a warm, safe place to live.
Thank you.
Robin, and thank you. Robin and Brian, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. You both have been extremely informative, and we appreciate you joining us this evening.
Can I say one last 10-second thing? I'm sorry, if you will. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Judge, but I did want to say this because it's my opinion. This council that we have now is the worst council in my lifetime. And part of it is that they're hypocrites, but another part of it is just that the first action that they took office January 4th. And on January 12th, they placed a fence around a homeless encampment on Lynn Street, a $40,000 fence. The city thought it was so important, to get rid of the face of homelessness. They don't want to see them. And they're so ruthless that the only place these people have to get out of the elements is under this bridge. And they place a 6-foot-high barbed wire fence around this bridge. The second thing they did in January was like the 20th. They gave $12 million to 7th and Vine, the old Macy's headquarters, for them to build 400 units of housing. Not one single unit in that building, the old Macy's headquarters, is affordable. In fact, it's 100% of the units are at 100% of the area median income, which means that in order to live there, you actually have to make twice the amount of the average person that lives in Cincinnati. How can these Democrats, how can these city council members even sleep at night knowing that their policies are actually the ones putting the people on the streets and exacerbating the problem of affordable housing and homelessness?
Yeah.
Thank you again. Sorry to interrupt there.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Church.
You gave us a lot of information. And just a reminder that this forum is going to be permanently on Facebook. So for those who missed it this evening, all you got to do is share it. We're asking people online now, please go to a Coalition for Just Hamilton County Facebook page and share it on your social media accounts right now and let people know what's going on and the education information that we're bringing them. Again, this is being co-sponsored this evening for the first time by not just the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, but the National Council of Negro Women. In fact, Robin is a member of the National Council of Negro Women, right? So we're very proud of her. And so again, if you have a question, go to the tab that says question and answer on the page, and you can put a question in the chat, and I will present your question to our panelists. Again, this is a nonpartisan forum this evening, and we will present the other side in the coming weeks. All right, with that, thank you. And we're going to turn.
Can the coalition endorse, you know, like no on 22 or yes on 24? Also, 23 is a big issue that no one knows about, but go ahead.
Okay, the Coalition for Just Hamilton County can take a position. We won't take it right now.
Okay, I was just asking.
But the National Council of Negro Women cannot.
I see.
So we're being very careful this evening to make sure tonight that we present the information in a manner that is nonpartisan, objective, and allows everyone to walk away and make their decision after this. And the council, the coalition will make a decision later.
And issue 23 is trying to take away the
Brian,
ability.
I got to skip.
I'm sorry, go ahead. But look into issue 23. It's a terrible thing that's sponsored by Liz Keating. Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye. We're going to, again, we're running way behind this evening, but we're going to now turn our attention to issue 1. And Dr. Vanessa Enoch, who is, I'm not sure if I believe she's a current or will be a candidate for the congressional race and has been in the past, is going to be speaking on issue 1 this evening that has to do with reproductive rights of women. Now, again, she's taking a position. This is not the position of the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, has not made a decision, and this is not the position of the National Council of Negro Women. This is just a person that is presenting their position on the issue. And again, we will bring the other side later. All right, with that, Dr. Enoch, are you on? Make sure.
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for being so patient. I know we reworked some things this evening because things were running behind and some people were running behind, some of our panelists. But thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to allow you to introduce yourself as well as the issue that you are representing tonight.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you to the coalition members for allowing me to present my position this evening. I thought it was important that I share my perspective on issue 1. I have a unique perspective, I think, because of my own life experiences. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a mom of 2 daughters. I am a Christian minister. And in 2022, I was the nominee for the U.S. House of Representatives in Ohio's 8th Congressional District. I was the Democratic nominee. I'm also a business owner. I'm a citizen of Ohio and of Butler County. I live in the Butler County area. I have a doctorate degree in interdisciplinary studies with a concentration in public policy. I think my entire background is important just to present the way that the lens by which I view this particular issue 1. And I want to share my personal story about my labor and delivery process. And then I want to share with you why that story is so important to me and why it's so important to issue 1. Before I went into labor with my oldest daughter, who was born in South Africa, I was told that my pelvis was too small to deliver my daughter. And the doctor's office provided me with a form asking that I sign to agree to an elective abortion surgery. The word abortion scared me. And I thought, okay, I want to deliver my daughter. I want my baby. I'm not interested in an abortion. And the doctor at that time explained to me that anytime you terminate or end a pregnancy, it is called an abortion procedure, because essentially what an abortion is just simply ending a pregnancy. And so I didn't trust the doctor. I didn't trust the doctor regarding my pelvic size. I couldn't believe that it would be possible that a woman's pelvis would not accommodate delivering a baby. So as a result, I refused to sign the paper. And instead, I wanted my body to go into labor, just like any other woman goes into labor, and to have her child. I did, however, want to have anesthetic when I went into labor. I wasn't completely crazy, but I did want to deliver my baby through my womb. And so what happened is when I went into labor, I initially went into labor, showed up at the hospital, and I was in total labor and in pain. I only dilated about 3 or 4 centimeters, and they attempted to induce my labor. And after attempting twice to induce me because I was in terrible pain, they sent me home to walk and do all kinds of things. And when the contractions got so bad, I went back to the hospital, and they attempted again to induce my labor, still failed labor. And at that point, first thing Monday morning, the doctor came in and said, "You are going to lose this baby. Your amniotic fluid has defaced around the baby, and there's no longer fluid there to sustain the pregnancy. You're going to lose this baby if we don't go ahead and take this baby by cesarean section." So they then, in an emergency situation, gave me an anesthetic and took my baby by cesarean section. I still didn't believe that my pelvis was too small. I just thought maybe I'm in South Africa. Maybe they just didn't know what they were doing. So on my second pregnancy, my second daughter was born here in the US. And without knowing any information about my pregnancy in South Africa, the hospital here told me that in order to deliver my second child, I was going to have a cesarean. They told me I'd have to have a cesarean because, again, my pelvis was too small to deliver this big-headed baby. And so at that point, I became a believer because they didn't know anything about what had happened previously. And I was convinced that I could have a baby naturally. And when they told me that I couldn't, I then signed a form to deliver my baby by cesarean section. This time around, I agreed to it ahead of time because they had given me the same information that I had received in South Africa. So that gave me a unique window into this whole idea of abortion. So when the conversation began to shift to the possibility of getting rid of abortion in America, I remembered my process. I remembered what the doctors in South Africa told me about what an abortion was. And so as a result of that, I began to do research so that I could educate other people. I didn't want anybody to have to suffer what I suffered, or to potentially lose their lives or lose the life of their baby. And so I wanted to make sure that I shared my story, my experiences, and that I looked deeply into this idea of what is an abortion, what exactly is included in an abortion, in this concept of an abortion. So, of course, being a doctor of public policy, I wanted to understand what policy said about what an abortion was. And so I'm going to share my screen with you. One of the first things that you learn as a doctor of anything is to look for reliable research data, reliable research information. Government websites are considered pretty reliable. And so when I typed in the words abortion methods on the internet, and you'll see this in front of you on my screen, the things that came up here is WebMD. I'm not going to go there first because here's a government website right here. So I clicked on the first thing that came up when I typed in abortion procedures. And what I found as I went through this list of what are abortion procedures, I found the suction curettage method here. I also found the dilation and evacuation. And bingo, right here, I found the words labor induction. That is what was given to me in order to deliver my child, both my first child, when I had failed labor, a labor induction. So I was induced. And for anybody else who was induced, you understand that procedure. Also on this list of abortion procedures is the cesarean section. This is the way that I ultimately delivered my second child, my first and second child, through a cesarean section. And so I thought, okay, women need to understand these are all the procedures here for conducting an abortion. Women need to understand that ultimately what an abortion is simply a medical procedure. By voting against issue 1, by voting no on issue 1, what you're ultimately doing is sacrificing your right to these medical procedures. And if that isn't scary enough for those of us who had to have an elective surgery in order to deliver our children, the idea of giving up this right should be at the forefront of our minds when it comes to, if you have children, if you have daughters who might one day decide that she wants to have a baby, and if she medically, like myself, cannot deliver a child, that what we're giving up is the right to these procedures, regardless of whether you are trying to deliver a child or you are electing to end your pregnancy for whatever other reason. These all go hand in hand, these procedures. In particular, there is a story that I want to show you out of Georgia. This particular couple, unfortunately, suffered the decapitation of the couple's baby. What inevitably ended up happening is this woman, when she was delivering her baby, her pelvis size was not large enough because of the way the baby was coming out, was being birthed. Her pelvis was not large enough to deliver this baby. She asked the physicians to deliver this baby by cesarean section, and they refused. And can you guys still hear me? Because I know my screen is freezing. Okay, good. They refused to deliver her baby by cesarean section. It could have been the fact that the physician was afraid to deliver that baby by cesarean section, despite the fact that the mother asked for it, because it could have been misconstrued as some other form of abortion. I have heard many stories by physicians who have said that they simply will not perform a cesarean under any circumstances. In many states, in fact, it is not legally allowed to perform any of the procedures that can be used for abortions, which all of the procedures to deliver a baby surgically are considered an abortion of sorts. And so for women who can't deliver babies naturally, this is a significant risk. This young lady asked for a cesarean section, it says here, while the baby was viable. She requested, and that doctor refused. Here's why that is extremely significant to me as an African-American woman, and to any other African-American women who might be on this forum tonight. African American women, according to this study, had a 5.1% smaller pelvic floor area than European women. And this was attributable to a 10.4% smaller posterior area, whereas the anterior area was similar. This is important because the people who will be most impacted by outlawing this surgical procedure to deliver a baby are African American women. That is concerning to me because I have two daughters. And so there are several articles out here that ask the question, are Black women's pelvic sizes smaller? And that answer, according to medical doctors and medical journals, is absolutely. Our pelvic sizes as African American women are smaller. But there are other risks that we have to be concerned with as African American women. And in fact, many African American women will experience uterine fibroids. According to this article, also from a reliable medical source, the National Library of Medicine, it was actually featured in the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. African American women, 80% of all African American women will experience benign uterine fibroid tumors at some point in their lifetime. 70% of white women will have uterine fibroids by the age of 50. This is significant because the other thing that this particular study found is that there are a number of risks with having fibroids. One of those risks is the potential, and I see that I'm frozen again, so I'm hoping I can still be heard, the potential for having difficulty in giving birth. This particular article points out a number of challenges with those fibroid tumors. And in fact, I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint. I have a PowerPoint that kind of where I highlighted this information. And so I already mentioned that fact there. But on this, can you all see the PowerPoint presentation? Can you see this slide that says fibroids?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Let me get back to it. I navigated away from it by accident. Okay, let me make that large again. So this particular slide points out some of the risk of women who have fibroids. And it says one meta-analysis evaluated the effect of uterine fibroids on the rate of pregnancy loss in women undergoing IVF, that's in vitro fertilization, and found that patients in this myoma group had twice the miscarriage rates as patients with fibroids. Also, uterine fibroids have been associated with various obstetric complications such as preterm labor, fetal malposition, placenta previa, postpartum hemorrhage, and neonatal morbidity. That means the baby dies in utero. What this means, it also says that studies have shown that women with fibroids more commonly have cesarean delivery than women without fibroids, about 48.8% versus 13.3%, mostly because of fetal malpresentation, the abnormal placenta caused by enlarged uterine fibroids. So again, 80% of all African American women and then 70% of white women will have fibroids by the time they're 50 years old. That means during those crucial childbearing years is when women typically will present with fibroids, making it difficult to then deliver a baby without having a cesarean section. These issues are the reason why I am advocating to ensure that we vote yes on issue one. Issue one is going to be dangerous to African-American women. It's dangerous to not have the ability to choose whether or not we want, or what we do with our bodies, whether or not we can have or we want to have an elective surgery of any of those sorts, whether it's because of our fibroids, or in some cases, for some women, Jewish women, for example, struggle with what's called Tay-Sachs disease. Their babies can potentially be born either without a skull or without a brain. Such was the case in Texas. A woman got pregnant with a child that had no skull, and she was forced to carry that baby to term. And she ended up leaving the state because of the risk. The risk of carrying a baby to term with no skull is sepsis. And sepsis is something that can kill you. That is poisons throughout the body. And in order to end that type of a pregnancy, a D&C, or a dilation and curettage, where they would actually scrape the womb to take out the placenta and all of that, that is, again, a procedure that is used for abortion. That would be a procedure that would be eliminated if we get rid of issue one. If we vote yes on issue one, we reserve our rights. If we vote no on issue one, we lose those rights. The advertising for issue one is very deceptive. In fact, on the way home tonight, I saw a big, huge sign that says, "Protect parents' rights. Vote no on issue one." It will do the exact opposite. It's going to take away your parental rights. Your parental rights, is to decide to have a procedure that could potentially save your life. And that is a concern. For us to lose that right, lose that opportunity to deliver a healthy baby even, is at stake when we choose yes on issue one. So that is why I'm advocating for a no vote on issue one. And with that, I will take questions.
So either of our co-moderators, do you have a question? I think you pretty much talked the entire half hour that was allotted. Or does anyone in our listening audience have a question? You can go to the Q&A button. And obviously, I'm going to ask this one question. You stated at the beginning that you were a Christian minister, and obviously I'm a pastor, and I'm pro-life in general. Obviously, that's going to be a huge dilemma for a lot of individuals from a spiritual standpoint, because obviously even in the African American community, that's the biggest concern that we obviously have, is that, being pro-life, is that, voting for something that would terminate life. But clearly you did give some very intriguing information tonight that I think behooves everyone to do research regarding some of the very routine procedures that you talked about, that some people are subject to just because of, like you said, fibroids, health conditions, other issues. And we do, of course, I have heard stories, some horror stories actually, of parents who they weren't going in for an abortion. They were trying to save, keep their children, but the doctors were afraid to do certain procedures on them because they thought it would violate the law.
Absolutely. And as a Christian and a Christian minister, first and foremost, I believe that legislators, one of the challenges we have is that the legislators on the opposite side of this issue, who are asking people to vote no, they don't care about which women suffer. They don't care that African American and Jewish women will suffer and could potentially lose their own lives if these important surgical procedures are not available to them. This is not a moral issue or an immoral issue. There are, of course, women who have chosen to terminate pregnancies for whatever the reason. And I think that there are, as a Christian minister, I've counseled women and encouraged them, you know, through difficult challenges and circumstances, who just struggle with, you know, whatever reason. And eliminating abortion surgical procedures are not going to change those things. Prior to abortions being legal in this country, women were choosing to do things to eliminate their own pregnancies, putting them at risk of potentially dying because they use coat hangers or whatever else to try and end pregnancies. Women with money will leave the country and go somewhere where they can have a safe abortion. It'll be poor women who will die simply because those important surgical procedures are not available to them. I hear all the time, and in fact, I saw another sign on the way home that said abortions up to birth do not belong in Ohio. Well, only 1% of all abortions, and I'm speaking of surgical procedures, because at 9 months of pregnancy, no doctor would even perform that procedure unless it was medically necessary. And a woman, either the woman or the child, would die without that procedure. Most doctors will not perform that surgery over 21 weeks unless it's medically necessary. So when you hear the term abortion up to birth, what they're talking about is women who are in emergency situations, who have chosen to carry their babies to term, who now need that procedure more than ever because they face the potential to lose their own lives or the lives of their children if they don't deliver that child through a cesarean section. So that's what we're talking about when you talk about abortions up to birth. It is really called a cesarean section and a delivery at that point. And that's what you're not hearing. The advocates for ending the right to an abortion use language that scares people and makes people think that they are doing something that is to end a life, and they're doing it because they're immoral and what have you. When in actuality, they're disregarding the risk of unsafe deliveries or the potential for a woman who cannot have those babies. African-American women in particular, we have a higher rate of fetal mortality, oftentimes because we don't have access to proper care, whether it be, we don't have access to doctors and physicians early on in our pregnancy or whatever. That's just going to get worse under a circumstance where women simply don't have access to procedures that they desperately need to deliver a baby through surgical means or otherwise. And so that is why, even as a Christian minister, I understand that there is a need for certain surgical procedures. In fact, the American Medical Association is urging people to vote yes, because they understand the risk and they understand what's going to happen, especially to women of color without access to the needed medical care.
Okay. Dr. Enoch, thank you so much for your very informational and educational presentation. Everybody pulled out PowerPoints this evening. I guess that's the benefit of being on Zoom, but part of that is taking us over our time in a great way this evening. And we do have one we have one school board candidate that we are going to talk to that is on our schedule this evening. And so we're going to switch. We thank you for your being very informational regarding that issue, as well as your position on that issue. A reminder to all of those who are listening or watching, this is a nonpartisan political forum this evening, and the views that are being expressed are those, obviously, that are being presented by the panelists. Because I'm representing tonight both the Coalition for Just Hamilton County as well as the National Council of Negro Women. It is very important that distinction is made clear. We do encourage you to go to the Coalition for Just Hamilton County website to share tonight's forum. It will remain out there. Early voting has already started. It started, I think, last week. And because of that, it was important to move as quickly as possible, because a lot of times people encourage people, they say, vote early, vote early. And what I've watched over the years, unfortunately, is people run out to the polls voting early, but they have no clue what the issues are. They haven't taken the time to research them. They don't understand them. They don't understand the language of the ballot. And so it was very important to us as organizations that we bring very substantive, educational, informational material to you to help you make an informed decision. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. But we're bringing the information and education to you. The next forum will present the other sides that were not presented here this evening. Again, if you have a question, you can put it up in the Q&A. And we're only going to spend a few minutes, because we did host, the coalition actually hosted a political forum alongside other organizations that was held recently at Corinthian Baptist Church. And we actually co-sponsor or co-hosted a political forum that allowed the city council the school board candidates to be presented. And one of the individuals was there that evening. And so we're really only going to give probably the next 10 minutes to this gentleman to come forward, and we'll provide equal time for the other ones. I believe there was one other person who wanted to speak that was not available tonight, and if she's available at the next forum, we will give her the same amount of time. But with that, I'm going to turn our attention to Brian Cannon, I believe, and he will be our last panelist for tonight. And let me bring him up if I can find him. I believe he's here.
He's already promoted.
Oh, okay. Thanks so much. All right. I am Brian Cannon. Good evening.
Good evening, Pastor Hunter. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for being patient. I know that we are way behind schedule, but we just wanted to give you an opportunity this evening. I believe you were present at the forum that we did co-sponsor actually a few weeks ago, which is why we'll just give you basically a few minutes to present your platform this evening, because school board and the education system is so important.
Okay. All right. Good. So my name is Brian Cannon. I'm a 33-year educator. So education is my life. I spent 22 years as a turnaround principal. So it basically means I went into a school to clean it up as the principal. I would change the school culture. I would look at their data. I would work with the teachers and decided like what we would keep and what we need to kind of get rid of. I did that for 22 years. I did it in 22 years in 4 different states. And so I bring a wealth of knowledge to where I am today. Currently, I am a teacher in Mount Healthy High School. And so my 33 years, I think, gives me a little knowledge about how to improve schools. I want to be a part of the school board because I think that it's an element that is missing currently. I'm looking at the current school board and I'm thinking, I saw the report card about a month ago. Our report card shows that 30% of our students, and that's on average, 30% of our students are proficient. That means that 70% are not. When you break the report card down, your Walnut Hills, your Daters, your Kilgore, those students are proficient. They have 80 to 90% of their students that do well in school. But then when you look at the Reese Price, the Carson, the West High, those students are not faring as well. And so what is that telling you. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that our Black and brown children are not doing well in CPS. Okay? And that's not a secret. I'm telling you facts.
Let me ask you a question. How can that be? Because we have now had a number of Black superintendents here, over the years that have been specifically hired in part because the academic performance rate of Cincinnati Public Schools has been so bad. I mean, I was a reporter for many years on the radio station for years. And I remember way back when they hired her last name was Powell. She didn't last here that long because I think she came into a climate that probably wasn't ready for change. But we've had now several Black superintendents, and yet schools remain in either academic emergency or underperforming. I mean, I look at these statistics and I'm shocked. What is the problem?
So education is really a science. And you can't afford to have a mishire, whether it's the superintendent, whether it's the principal, whether it's the teacher. Because when you have a mishire, that puts a student 3 years behind. We already have a population of students who come to school 2 years behind in kindergarten. And so we have to consciously do what we need to do to educate our children. And now, I educate all children. But when you're looking at the specific data of CPS, you see the Black and brown children are not being successful. And you can look at the data, the report card over the last 10, 15 years. I've only been in this area for the last 15 years, and the data has been fairly consistent. And so we need a board who is going to put kids first, which is part of my motto. I will always make decisions that is in the best interest of children. The second part of my motto is that I will always consider the teachers when I make that decision, the teachers and the staff. And then families are essential into this whole mix. And so we have to have board members who are putting kids first. And so what does that mean? That means that we're talking student achievement, because that's how we are graded as a state, as a city. We're graded on how well our students perform. And for too long, we have been graduating students who are not considered proficient. And so what happens with them when they graduate? They get the menial jobs, if a job at all. And so that puts them in a different pipeline. I don't even want to go down that road. And so we have to do something different. We have to make sure that we collaborate with our superintendent. Now, as a school board, we develop policy, we manage the budget, we hire the superintendent and the treasurer. Those are our only 2 employees. And so as a school board member, we have to collaborate with our only 2 employees to make sure that she is making decisions that's in the best interest of kids and that are instructionally sound. Now, based on my background, I know how to improve schools. That's what separates me from the other school candidates. And so I want to be a part of the school board to assist in making sure that those 70% of students who are not proficient, which is over 20,000, get closer to proficiency.
Good evening. You made the statement that the children are coming 2 years behind in kindergarten, which actually speaks to the necessity of quality preschool education. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati Public Schools has taken over the preschool, not quite completely, but just about.
Preschool promise.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not saying preschool promise. I'm saying Cincinnati Public Schools now has the lion's share of preschool children mm-hmm. in their schools. So since, you're still saying they're coming 2 years behind, why is it that with them giving the children the base that they need before kindergarten, because they've taken over preschool, why aren't the numbers better? Doesn't that indicate?
And let me tell you, I think it's going to get better.
The reason why I wanted to, it's been proven nationally that preschool increases the outcome for children. So if Cincinnati Public has most of the preschool children, why aren't the numbers better?
I mean, it takes time. If you're going to transform a school, it takes, or a group of students, it takes about 3 years, 3 to 5 years to make that improvement. And so I think that it's going to happen. I think it's on a trajectory. When you look at data from preschool right now, or even into kindergarten, you will see improvement. So it's not like a majority of our preschool students are 2 grades behind. You probably got about half of them. And I don't have the specific number in front of me, but if you look at the state report card, you can see where it is.
Then how will you handle the issue of busing and the lack of busing for Cincinnati Public School children who are now on city buses in order to get transported home? How would you handle that?
And so, as I'm a newcomer, right? So I'm just learning the process. I think that we might want to consider having our own fleet of buses that we can control. Now, that's a large pot of money that we would need to make that happen. But then we can control our buses. We can control our own routes. Right now, they're looking at multiple options. They're looking at the yellow bus option, and they're looking at the metro option. I mean, is that a viable option? I think one of the things that we need to do is look at dedicated routes for our high schools and middle schools, so that those students are on a bus only for students and not mixed with the general population. That would be able to help us, because then the routes are going from school, picking up only our students, and then taking them to their neighborhoods. And I think that can help. You can also look at the ranges of, there's a certain distance in the state of Ohio that requires transportation. And I think Cincinnati goes above what the state is requiring. I think the state requires 1.5 miles. If you're under that, then you walk. And I think, let me get my numbers right. I think they require 1.5, and then Cincinnati's at 1.25. So they're busing more students than they actually have to. I mean, it's good for our families and our kids, but then financially, it's a big burden. It's a bigger burden.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Pastor Hunters, you're on mute. I saw her lips moving, but hear anything.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, Minister Johnson, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I have something. It's about the safety at the schools. I know that Mount Healthy had a emergency the other day. One of my nurses had to run out the school. But I want to know how or what can you all do to help keep the schools safe and to help, I don't know how to word this, to keep people from coming in, to keep schools safe.
So safety is a big important issue, because recently in CPS and surrounding districts, we have seen more lockdowns. And so that's when there is either an intruder in the building or when there is an evident threat, even a phone call. And at Mount Healthy, it was an 8th grade student who made a phone call with someone else's phone, and they made a threat. The school was on lockdown, the parents were notified, and the parents were told, don't come up to the school because we're on lockdown. You can't get in and nobody's getting out. So it puts people in a lot of panic. I think the best thing we can do about that is educating our students at how serious that is, because that student will be prosecuted. That's a felony.
It should.
Right. But But when you look at it, it's like, okay, this is a 12-year-old kid now has a felony. Unfortunately, but we have to teach our kids that they have to do the right thing and about the responsibility for other people. You know, when you have parents outside the school knocking on doors to get in because they don't know what's going on.
Right.
And then you have the teachers, the administrators trying to keep kids in, keep kids safe. It creates almost hysteria. And so we have to do more to educate our kids that, you know, those prank calls, they're not a joke. Those are very serious. Yeah. And I think that's a doable thing. You know, once kids see that this kid has been prosecuted, then maybe less likely, you know, that will happen in the future. But even more importantly, we have to create an environment that's conducive for learning. That means that all kids feel safe in the school. Our attendance rates are dismal. We have 50% of our students who have missed 18 or more days. 18 days attributes to like a month of school, you know, because we don't go to school on a weekend. So we have 50%, almost 50% of our students who have missed a month or more of school. You can't learn if you're not in the seat. Okay, that's another issue about safety. Then you have to make the school, when the kids do come to school, you have to make sure the school is safe. Mm-hmm. You know, the issue that happened at Schroeder, where the kid got attacked for not giving up his homework. You know, we have to make sure that our kids are safe. We have to make sure that we have the structures in place, the resource officers in place, teachers are visible in the classroom. And so these are all procedural things that adults really can control. And so how do we do that, and how do we systematically do that across the district is what we need to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm looking, I don't see any Q&As on the forum. I'm checking chat. I don't believe I see any chats. And so due to the time, we're going to, let's see, make sure. Okay, I see no other questions. So we're going to wrap this up. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity. I did have one question, and please use this in your closing comment. Okay. You work at Mount Healthy schools, and to be honest, they're dismal a little too. I know people that go there, and so I kind of watch, kind of look at all of the schools and their academic ratings. But you work in Mount Healthy, but you're running for the Cincinnati School Board. So maybe in your closing comments, you can say why that is. Maybe about where you live, or I don't know, but why is that? And then please conclude with your final remarks.
Okay, so I live in the West End. So that's where I live. I want to be a part of the district where I live. If I worked in CPS, I couldn't be on the board. I would be my own boss. Okay. You understand what I'm saying? So I could be a teacher in CPS, but then I would be over the superintendent. You see how that really wouldn't work appropriately, which is why most people who run for CPS board and their teachers, they end up giving up their profession and going to another district. But what I wanted to say in closing is that if I make it on this board, that I will be the only active teacher on the board because I work in Mount Healthy. If I make it on this board, I would be the only person with a superintendent's license. So I have an Ohio superintendent's license. Now, I'm not on the endorsed Democratic slate sheet, so I have been busting my behind to make sure that I'm at the Hamilton County Board of Election, meeting voters, meeting parents that are coming to do early voting, talking to them about my platform, because I truly believe that I can affect change in CPS. And I think our students deserve it. I was one of those students. I grew up in the projects of Boston, Massachusetts. The only thing that got me out of that situation was a quality education. I was part of a desegregation program that sent me 90 minutes away from my home every morning. So at 7 and 8, I got on a bus, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I got bused to the suburbs. for a quality education. I had an older brother who went to Boston public schools. And in the 70s, what Boston was like when it comes to schools and the racial divisiveness that was there. He fought his way into school in South Boston, and he fought his way out of school. We grew up in the same household, same single parent. The only difference was the education that we received. I ended up with 3 degrees, graduating high school. He ended up in the penal system, not graduating high school. Education is a game changer. And every year that we put out 70% of our students and they're graduating and they're not proficient, we are setting them up for failure, which means we're setting Cincinnati up for failure. And we're creating a pipeline that we do not want our kids in. So that's why I'm running for school board. I hope that I can get you guys your votes if you are in the city. And please tell your
question. I'm sorry, I have to ask this question. I don't have to, but I am.
Go ahead.
I've always known there's always been a shortage of Black men in the system, in the school. And I think that's important because you're a Black man. If you could just address, I don't know if you know the percentage of Black teachers, Black male teachers in the public, Cincinnati public, or even where you are, Mount Healthy. How critical is that for Black male teachers?
It is absolutely critical. It is important for our Black and brown children to see us in front of the classroom. But in CPS, you might not see many males in our schools. I don't have a particular number, but I know it's not high. Even when you look at the administration ranks, that's not a high number. And I think that we need to go back to looking at those programs that created teachers, those programs that took high school students and got them into the education profession. We need to go back to that because there's a teacher shortage. And the new teachers they're getting, they don't look like us, right? Most of them are white females. And so we have to do something better. We have to be proactive at recruiting. We might have to go out of this state to recruit, and so human resources, they need to get on it. And they need to give us some teachers who can make some connections with students.
All right, Brian Cannon, thank you so much for sharing with us this evening your platform.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that's going to conclude this evening's first political forum, basically on the issues presented by the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, co-sponsored for the first time ever with the National Council of Negro Women, an organization that I'm a part of. And one of our prior panelists, Robin Wright Pierce, was also a part of. And so I want to thank the NCNW for joining us for the first time this evening. And again, it's very important to note, especially for the NCNW, that tonight's forum, although all of the issues presented, the persons were on the same side, we're going to bring the opposing sides in a future forum to make sure that persons get the opportunity to hear both sides and to weigh both sides and to make an informed, intelligent choice when you go to the ballot to vote. That's what this is all about, is information and education, particularly in our community, that enables people to make an informed decision and be able to articulate why they are taking a position, regardless of what side of the issue that you happen to follow. And just make sure that when you go to the poll, that you are already aware, you know about the issue, you understand, because oftentimes the ballot language can be very confusing, depending on who worded that issue. And so you need to be as informed as possible in advance before you go to the polls. Early voting has already started. And so we hope tonight helped. Again, I would encourage you to go to the Coalition for Just Hamilton County. Please share this on your social media. You can YouTube it, you can Facebook it, you can live stream it, whatever. Just make sure that not only did you get the information, but that you share it with someone else and copy the link, put it in your email, send it to your family and your friends. let them also hear the information and make an informed decision. So I want to thank all of our moderators tonight. Again, this was a very long evening for us. So I want to thank you, Minister Kathy Tyler. I want to thank you, Minister Carol Johnson. I want to thank Miss Carol Patton. She reached out to all of the candidates. She's been working extremely hard. And I want to thank the electoral committee, the entire committee of the coalition that was working on this. I want to thank the president of the NCNW, Danielle Marshall, for when we reached out to her for, it took a minute to get back, but I know she's really busy. But she recognized the significance and the importance of this forum, and she immediately agreed to come on board, because it actually is also part of a newly released initiative by the National Council of Negro Women. We just had a forum earlier this week from our president in Washington, D.C., telling us that we needed to, every section across this country needs to get involved in voter education, social justice, et cetera. And so as part of that initiative, this was actually one of the first steps that we took to do that. So again, thank you all for joining us, all of the attendees, those who have been on for the last almost 3 hours. We really appreciate it. It's been a long night. We really, really appreciate you. I'm going to ask you, Minister Tyler, if you would just close us out a night of prayer.
Yes. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to learn and to be informed, God. And we ask that you would help us to use this information to make wise decisions, especially those that are based on justice for people who are underserved. And so, Lord, we ask that we would not just vote fast, but we would vote informed and make wise decisions. And we ask you to help us to do that so that we can have our communities thrive and it be equitable for everyone in the community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. God bless you. Thank all of our panelists that participated here this evening. Have a great night.